You'll never be able to play. A famous white pianist said that to a blind black boy on stage at America's most elite conservatory while hundreds of wealthy patrons watched. Victoria Sterling looked at 16-year-old Yale Brooks, there tuning pianos for $50 because his guardian couldn't afford electricity. "These instruments cost more than your entire ghetto," she sneered, staring at his dark hands on white keys with pure disgust. "Poor blind black boys don't perform here. You serve wealthy people like us. You stay invisible while we make art. That's your place in our world. What happens next shocks the music world. 23 million watched the video that destroyed her career and exposed who really gets to make music in America. If you've been told to know your place because of your race or poverty, subscribe now. What happens in 8 minutes will prove that talent obliterates every barrier." 3 hours earlier, the Ashford Conservatory of Music. The kind of place where the marble came from Italy and the chandeliers cost more than most people's houses. Where portraits of dead white composers lined the walls like a hall of gatekeepers. Where the annual showcase was the social event of the season for people who measured wealth in generations, not paychecks. Yale Brooks pushed through the service entrance, not the main doors with the brass handles, the side door, where the help came in. His white cane tapped ahead, mapping the hallway, the loading dock, the narrow corridor that led backstage. He knew this route, had walked it a dozen times, $50 per piano, 5 pianos today, $250. Enough for groceries, enough to keep Mr. Anderson's house from falling further behind on bills. 16 years old. Junior year at the public high school across town, the one with metal detectors and overcrowded classrooms. The one where teachers were surprised when he got good grades, like being blind and black meant he couldn't be smart too. But that was fine. Yale had learned early to be underestimated, to be invisible, to move through spaces that weren't meant for him without making people uncomfortable. His tuning kit bumped against his leg as he walked, heavy, familiar. The tools of his trade, because that's what he was here, a tradesman, someone who worked with his hands, someone who served the people who could afford to be served. "Yale!" A voice from the stage, warm, gruff. "Mr. William Anderson." Bill to his friends, 73 years old, blind since birth, master piano tuner, the best in the state, maybe the country, and Yale's guardian for the past 4 years. "The Steinway's drifting again," Bill called. "High register." "I got it," Yale said, his voice quiet, trained to not take up too much space. 4 years ago, everything changed. His parents died, James Brooks, Sarah Brooks. His father played jazz piano at clubs on the South Side. His mother sang gospel at the church on Sunday mornings. They met over music, fell in love over music, raised Yale in music. Then black ice on the interstate, gone in a second. Yale was 12, suddenly alone, the foster system looming. But Mr. Anderson showed up. His father's old friend, showed up at the funeral, showed up at the hearing, signed the papers, took Yale home to a small house on the east side where rent was cheap and opportunities were cheaper. "Your daddy taught you to hear," Bill had said that first night. "Your mama taught you to feel. I'll teach you everything else." And he did. From midnight to 3 a.m., while Bill slept, Yale practiced on the old upright in the living room, teaching himself, learning by ear, jazz from his father's memory, gospel from his mother's voice, and something else, something that was only his. But he never played in public, never performed. Because boys like him didn't perform at places like this. Boys like him tuned the pianos, collected their $50, stayed invisible. Yale made his way to the concert hall, found the stage stairs with his cane, climbed carefully. The Steinway waited, a Model D, 9 feet long, Hamburg built. Worth more than 10 years of his and Bill's combined income. He sat on the bench, ran his fingers over the keys without pressing down, just feeling, temperature, humidity, the microscopic patterns that told stories. This piano had been played recently, hard, someone showing off, technique over feeling. He opened his kit, started tuning, not with his eyes, with everything else. The vibrations through the bench, through his fingertips, through his chest. Perfect fifths. The sound of truth, Bill called it. The hall started filling. He heard them, the rustle of expensive fabric, designer gowns, tailored suits, perfume that cost more per ounce than his monthly groceries. Voices discussing stock portfolios, European vacations, their children at Ivy League schools. Yale kept tuning. Invisible, the way he was supposed to be. Then she arrived, Victoria Sterling. The name rippled through the hall like electricity. Guest artist, celebrated pianist, featured in magazines, performed with symphonies, the kind of success that looked effortless because it started with the right family, the right education, the right opportunities. She walked past Yale, didn't acknowledge him. Why would she? He was part of the furniture, part of the backdrop, just another black kid doing manual labor while important people made art. This piano! Her voice cut through the murmur, cold, precise, annoyed. Someone tuned this piano, properly. The conservatory director appeared, nervous, sweating. Miss Sterling, this is Yale, I don't care who he is. She waved her hand dismissively. I care that it's tuned correctly, by someone who knows what they're doing. Yale's jaw tightened. He'd spent 45 minutes on that piano. It was perfect, better than perfect. But he didn't say anything, just nodded, stood, moved back to the bench. He'd check it again, even though it didn't need checking. Because that's what you do when you're the help, when you exist to serve, when questioning means not getting hired again, when $50 means keeping the lights on. Bill watched from the wings, silent, steady, knowing what this cost Yale, the constant swallowing of pride, the constant acceptance of disrespect, but also knowing they needed the money. That dignity was expensive, that survival sometimes meant biting your tongue. Yale sat, tuned, made microscopic adjustments that changed nothing because the piano was already right. But he went through the motions, because Victoria Sterling needed to feel superior, needed to feel served, needed to remind everyone, including herself, where she stood in the hierarchy. And soon, very soon, she'd learn that hierarchy isn't the same as talent. Victoria sat at the Steinway, played a few bars, Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat, technically clean, emotionally cold, the kind of playing that impresses other pianists but leaves audiences untouched. She stopped abruptly. The A is still flat. Yale stood 3 feet away, his hands still. Ma'am, I heard what you just did. She didn't turn to look at him. I'm telling you it's wrong. Fix it. The A wasn't flat. Yale had tuned it perfectly. Checked it twice, but he knelt anyway. Opened his kit, went through the motions, adjusted the pin a fraction, tightened it back, gave her the illusion of correction. Better, she said. No thank you, no acknowledgement of his work, just dismissal. Yale started to gather his tools, started to leave. Wait, her voice sharp, commanding. You play, don't you? He froze. Ma'am? Piano. You play piano. Not a question. An accusation. Yes, ma'am, a little. She laughed. The sound cutting through the hall. People nearby turned to watch. How old are you? 16. She stood, walked around the piano toward him, her heels clicking on the stage floor like a countdown. And you're correcting me? About tuning? When you can't even see what you're doing? I wasn't correcting, ma'am. I was just... Where did you study? I didn't. I learned by... Of course you didn't. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Expensive, heavy, claiming space. Let me guess. You play by ear. You taught yourself. You think that makes you special. Someone in the gathering crowd, students, faculty, donors, giggled. Others shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Come, Victoria said, louder now, performing for the audience. Sit, play something. Let's see what self-taught looks like. What playing by ear looks like when you're from... Where are you from? The East Side, ma'am. The East Side. She repeated it like the words tasted bad. Of course. Well, let's see what the East Side produces. Sit. I really don't think... I insist. Her voice hardened. Consider it a learning opportunity. You want to understand tuning? You need to understand playing, real playing, not whatever you do in your spare time. The crowd was bigger now. 30 people, 40, all watching, all waiting. The energy shifting from uncomfortable to curious, from embarrassed to entertained. Yale's throat tightened. His hands went cold, but he crossed to the bench, set his cane against it, sat down, the keys under his fingers, warm from her hands, familiar from tuning, foreign for playing. Not here, not in front of these people, not as entertainment for their judgment. He found middle C, placed his hands in position, started something simple. Mozart, Sonata in C major. The opening phrase, clean, basic, something to satisfy her curiosity, and then, stop. 10 seconds. She'd given him 10 seconds.
Can you even find middle C without seeing it? Without sheet music to guide you?
Someone laughed. Victoria continued. Playing by ear isn't playing. It's mimicry. It's parroting what you've heard without understanding what you're doing, without understanding theory, structure, history, context. Yale's fingers stayed on the keys, frozen. You seem like a hard-working young man, Victoria said, choosing her words carefully. Coded language. And I'm sure you do your best, but there's a reason we have conservatories. There's a reason we study for years, decades. It's not gatekeeping, it's standards. She walked back to the piano, stood beside him. Some people are born for this, born with the resources, the education, the cultural background to truly understand classical music. Others, she paused, let the silence speak. Others should focus on what they're good at. Like tuning, you're clearly skilled at that. Stick with it. Sophie Mitchell, a student in the front row, Yale had heard her voice before, started to speak. Maybe we should... One look from Victoria. Sophie went quiet. Natural talent only goes so far, Victoria continued. Without proper training, without coming from a family that understands music, without the right foundation. You can play notes, but you'll never really play. Not the way it's meant to be played. The conservatory director appeared, trying to smooth things over. Perhaps we should move on to the rehearsal schedule, Miss Sterling. We're running a bit behind. But Victoria wasn't finished. She leaned down, close, loud enough for everyone to hear. You'll never be able to play, not really. The words hung in the air, heavy, final, cruel. The room went silent, uncomfortable. People looking away, looking at their phones, anywhere but at the blind black teenager being humiliated on stage. But Yale didn't stand up, didn't leave. His hands stayed on the keys, and something in him shifted. A decision, a choice. May I finish what I started, ma'am? Victoria's eyebrows raised, surprised, amused. By all means, show us what you've got. But before Yale could play, her colleagues joined in, like sharks, sensing blood. It's wonderful that the conservatory creates these opportunities, a man in a tweed jacket said, loud enough to be heard. Exposure for underprivileged youth, very progressive. Community outreach is so important, a woman agreed, her voice dripping with the kind of sympathy that changes nothing. Though, of course, there's a difference between exposure and readiness, between participation and actual performance. The conservatory director cleared his throat. Yale is exceptionally talented at tuning. Perhaps another time for performance, Yale. We really must let Miss Sterling rehearse. No. Victoria held up her hand. Let him play, he asked so politely. And besides, she turned to address the growing audience. This is actually a valuable teaching moment for everyone. Mr. Anderson's voice from the side of the stage, quiet but firm. Victoria, the boy doesn't need to prove anything to... I'm sure you've done your best with him. Victoria cut him off. But this isn't about tuning. This is about artistry, about understanding the difference between technical skill and true musicianship. She walked as she talked, pacing, performing. In her element now, the stage hers, the audience hers, the narrative hers to control. You see, there's a reason conservatories exist, a reason we spend years, decades studying. It's not elitism, it's excellence. It's maintaining standards in an art form that requires not just talent, but education, cultural literacy, historical context. Nods from the audience, murmurs of agreement. These were people who believed in hierarchies, in earned privilege, in the idea that success came from merit, not accidents of birth. Someone who learns by ear, Victoria continued, might be able to reproduce melodies. They might have a good ear for pitch, but do they understand harmonic structure? Do they understand why Rachmaninoff wrote the prelude in C-sharp minor the way he did? The depression he was fighting? The critics he was answering? Can they understand Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody without knowing the history of the Roma people, without understanding the political context? She turned to Yale. Do you even know what a rhapsody is? The form, the tradition? Yale knew. His father had taught him, late nights, explaining as he played. The way jazz and classical weren't so different, both conversations, both ways of saying something true. But Yale didn't answer, just sat, just waited. Of course you don't, Victoria concluded. And that's not your fault. You're 16. You're from a neighborhood that doesn't have access to these resources. You probably went to underfunded public schools. You're doing the best you can with what you have. The patronizing tone, the assumption, the way she spoke about him like he wasn't there, like he couldn't hear every coded word. How old did you say he was? Someone asked. 16, Victoria repeated. And already convinced he belongs on the same stage as trained professionals. It's actually quite sad. Someone should have been honest with him earlier, before he wasted years chasing something impossible. Sophie Mitchell tried again. This doesn't seem... Victoria's look. Cold. Final. Sophie sat back, complicit through silence. Yale's breathing stayed controlled. Meditative. The way Bill taught him. When the world gets loud, you get quiet. When they push, you root. When they try to make you small, you remember who you are. A memory. His mother's voice. Warm, southern, real. Baby, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody, but if you choose to, make it count. Take Ravel, Victoria said. Gaspard de la Nuit, one of the most technically demanding pieces in the repertoire. Could you play it by ear? Maybe, if you heard it enough times. Could you understand it? The symbolism, the poetry it's based on? The romantic tradition it emerges from? No, you simply can't. Because understanding requires education that you haven't had, and frankly, may never have access to. The twist of the knife, dressed up as concern, as honest assessment, as truth-telling. These instruments, she gestured to the Steinway, cost more than most cars. They require years of training to play properly. They're not toys. They're not for experimenting. They're serious instruments for serious musicians from serious backgrounds. Yale's left hand moved slightly, finding the bass notes, muscle memory, the low E, the F, the G. His father's territory, the foundation. Yes, Victoria noticed. You have something to say? Yale lifted his head, turned toward her voice. May I finish what I started, ma'am? She laughed. Genuine surprise. You're persistent, I'll give you that. She turned to the crowd. What do you think? Should we let him demonstrate exactly what I've been talking about? Let him show us the difference between training and enthusiasm? A few people clapped, uncertain. Most stayed silent, watching, waiting to see how this played out. Entertainment now, a spectacle. Show us what you've got, kid, Victoria said, stepping back, crossing her arms, confident, in control. This would be over in minutes. The boy would play his little piece. She'd nod politely. Everyone would clap, and the lesson would be clear. Stay in your lane, know your place, accept your limitations. Mr. Anderson's hand touched Yale's shoulder. Brief, grounding. Perfect fifth, son. The sound of truth. Victoria heard. Truth? The truth is this. Talent without training is potential. Potential without resources is tragedy. And playing by ear without formal education is just noise pretending to be music. Yale didn't respond, just adjusted the bench. Small movements, precise, cracked his knuckles, both hands. The sound echoing in the now quiet hall. Then he placed his fingers on the keys. Wrists relaxed, shoulders down, head tilted slightly, listening. To the room, to the acoustics, to the breathing of 200 people waiting to judge him. Someone's phone camera clicked. Recording, documentation of a lesson, proof of hierarchy, evidence of who belongs and who doesn't. The crowd leaned forward despite themselves, curious, skeptical, ready to be proven right. Victoria stood with her arms crossed, waiting. This would take less than a minute. Then they could move on. Then things could return to normal. Then the boy could go back to tuning and she could go back to being the star. Yale breathed. Once, twice, 3 times. And then his fingers came down on the keys. The first note, middle C, pure, clear, perfect. Then the Mozart sonata. The same opening Victoria had interrupted. But now complete. Every note weighted correctly, every phrase shaped. Classical technique, textbook perfect. The kind of playing that takes years to develop. 2 bars in. His left hand shifted, added something underneath. A walking bass line, jazz, swing, syncopation, the kind his father played. The kind that made clubs on the South Side come alive at midnight. Mozart and Miles Davis, somehow, together, working. First reaction from the crowd, confusion, then recognition, then shock. What is he? Someone whispered. His right hand maintained the classical melody, perfect articulation, perfect tempo, but his left hand underneath told a different story. stride piano, chromatic runs, the conversation between order and freedom, between Europe and America, between what was taught and what was felt. Victoria's face changed, the smug confidence flickering. 8 bars in, Yale transitioned, smooth, inevitable, from Mozart into Rachmaninoff, prelude in C-sharp minor. The piece she'd mentioned, the one she said he couldn't understand, but he didn't play it like Rachmaninoff. He played it like his mother would have sung it, gospel chords underneath, 7th chords, 9th chords, the kind that make you feel something you can't name, the kind that reach past your brain straight to your chest, the melody the same, the architecture the same, but the soul completely transformed. Technical flex now, his right hand running up the keyboard, fast, clean, arpeggios that conservatory seniors struggle with, then back down, then both hands in stride, each finger independent, each note intentional, control, complete, total. He smiled, just slightly. 16 years old, finally playing what he'd practiced in the dark, finally heard, finally free. Someone gasped, then another, then a murmur building like a wave. How old is he? A whisper. 16. That's not possible. His hands quoted Liszt now. Hungarian Rhapsody, the piece Victoria mentioned. But he didn't imitate. He transformed, took the melody, ran it through a blues scale, added a phrase his grandmother used to hum. A Delta blues thing, old, painful, beautiful. His father had played it when he was homesick, when he was missing something he couldn't name. The audience shifted, phones coming out, not to mock, to document, to capture, to have proof of what they were witnessing, because no one would believe them otherwise. Yale's body moved with the music, not for show, just natural response. The piano bench creaking, his shoulders swaying, his head tilting into phrases, inhabited by the sound. Sophie Mitchell leaned forward, mouth open. "Oh my God," she whispered. The conservatory director turned to his assistant. How is he? More quotes. Ravel, Gaspard de la Nuit. The piece Victoria mentioned, the most technically demanding. But Yale wove it through gospel, his mother's territory, taking any melody and making it sacred, making it ache, making it soar, polyrhythms now, both hands playing different time signatures, 3 against 4, 5 against 6, the kind of coordination that takes years, that conservatory students struggle with in their 3rd year, that professionals practice for hours to maintain. But Yale wasn't struggling, he was conversing. His hands having a dialogue, right hand asking questions, left hand answering, back and forth, call and response, the oldest tradition, the deepest truth. "How is he doing that?" someone said, louder now, not whispering anymore. Victoria's pen slipped from her fingers, clattered on the floor, a small sound, but distinct. Yale heard it, smiled wider, kept playing, the technical peak building, runs up and down, both hands, crossing over each other, never tangling, never missing, every note exactly where it needed to be, when it needed to be, how it needed to be. An older black woman in the 3rd row, elegant, composed, recognized by some as Lorraine Hayes, Grammy-winning jazz pianist, leaned to her companion, tears on her face. "That's how we do it," she whispered. "That's exactly how we do it." Yale wove in a spiritual, wade in the water, his mother's favorite, slipped it into the classical structure so naturally that most people didn't notice. But Mr. Anderson did, standing at the side of the stage, tears streaming, knowing, recognizing, proud beyond words, the piece built, all elements together now. Classical structure, jazz improvisation, gospel emotion, blues soul, everything his parents were, everything they taught him without meaning to, everything Bill refined, everything Yale discovered alone in the dark at 3 a.m. People standing now, not in ovation yet, just to see better, to lean closer, to not miss a second. The Steinway sang. That's the only word. The instrument Yale had tuned so carefully earlier. Every note he'd perfected. Every adjustment he'd made, all of it paying off now. He'd known, somehow, that he'd play this piano, had tuned it for this moment without knowing he was tuning it for this moment, building to the first climax, everything coming together, speed, power, emotion, technique, all of it converging into something greater than its parts. And then he stopped, mid-phrase, hands still on the keys, silent. The room held its breath, confused, waiting. What happened? Why did he stop? 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5, the silence excruciating, hungry, electric with potential. Victoria frozen, her face unreadable, her arms at her sides. Then Yale shifted, softer now, gentler. A new melody emerged. Original. His composition. Something he'd written late at night. Thinking about his parents, about what they'd want him to say, about what music means when words fail. Simple, honest, not showing off, just feeling, just expressing. The grief of losing them. The gratitude for Bill. The loneliness of being different. The hope that maybe he could be heard. Someone in the audience started crying. Openly. A woman in the fifth row, then another, then several. The melody ached in a way that technique can't teach, in a way that conservatories can't grade, in a way that money can't buy. "He's not playing the piano," Sophie whispered. "He's talking through it." Yale's breathing synchronized with the phrases, inhale on the question, exhale on the answer. The music became breath. Breath became music, no separation. The temperature in the room changed, from cold judgment to warm attention, from closed minds to open hearts, from hierarchy to humanity, and Yale played on, building again. One more time, one more peak, all the themes returning, all the quotes, all the influences. Mozart, Rachmaninoff, Liszt, Ravel, his father's jazz, his mother's gospel, his grandmother's blues. All of it woven together into something that transcended every boundary they'd tried to place on it. The piano bench groaned with his movement. His feet found the pedals by feel. Sustain at exactly the right moments. Release at exactly the right moments. Control so complete it looked effortless. But he wasn't done. Not yet. One more truth to speak. The final build was coming. And everyone in that room knew it. Everyone felt it. Everyone waited for it. Everything now. All techniques, all emotions, all truths. Classical precision in the right hand, jazz improvisation in the left, gospel chords underneath, blues soul throughout, every register of the piano alive. Speaking, singing, crying, celebrating. The piece crescendoed, building intensity, building power. Yale's whole body involved, not performing, inhabited, possessed by something larger than himself, larger than the room, larger than the moment. The runs got faster, more complex, things that shouldn't be possible. Things that take decades to master. Things that Victoria Sterling herself would struggle with on her best day. But there they were, undeniable, real, true. The audience transported. Some with tears streaming down their faces, some with mouths open, some just staring, processing, trying to reconcile what they thought they knew with what they were witnessing. "Oh my God," someone said, louder now. "Oh my God." Yale built to the final cascade. Everything he had, every technique his father taught him without knowing, every emotion his mother sang without realizing, every truth Bill refined with patience, every discovery Yale made alone in the dark. His hands flew, crossed, never tangling, never hesitating. Every note exactly right. This was mastery. This was genius. This was what happens when talent meets work, meets necessity, meets truth. The final phrase. Yale returned to the beginning. The Mozart Sonata. The opening Victoria had interrupted, but now transformed, now complete. Now everything it was always meant to be. The final chord, both hands, full, rich, perfect fifths. The sound of truth, letting it ring, letting it decay naturally. 12 seconds, 11, 10, 9, 8. The room counting without knowing it. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. The sound fading, the silence growing. 2, 1, silence, complete, total. Absolute silence. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. The quality of the silence electric, disbelieving, hungry for what came next but afraid to break the spell. 5 seconds passed, then 6, then 7, then a single clap, from the back, loud, deliberate, strong hands, the older black woman, Lorraine Hayes, standing, clapping, refusing to let this moment pass without acknowledgement. Then another clap, then another, then eruption. The room exploded. Standing ovation, immediate, universal, the sound like a wave breaking, like a storm hitting, like something that had been held back too long, finally released. Feet stomping on old wood floors, the building itself celebrating, the walls amplifying the sound, giving it back, making it bigger. Young voices screaming, older voices crying, people from different worlds, different backgrounds, different beliefs, all united in this moment, all recognizing that something extraordinary had just happened. Yale's hands trembled on the keys, the adrenaline crashing, the reality hitting, his breath catching, hitching, tears breaking free, not sad tears, released tears, finally heard tears. Victoria stood frozen 3 feet from the piano, her face cycling through emotions too fast to track. Shock, disbelief, recognition, understanding, shame, that last one settling, growing, becoming undeniable. She was crying, not pretty tears, not performed tears, the kind that come with ego death, with realizing you were completely wrong, with understanding you said something cruel to a child, a talented child. A child with more mastery than you'd achieved in 30 years of privilege and training. The conservatory director's mouth hung open, his brain already working, calculating, damage control, opportunity, this kid, this moment, the video probably already viral, how to spin this, how to claim credit, how to benefit. Students rushed the stage, controlled chaos, voices overlapping, questions, praise, apologies. Sophie Mitchell reached Yale first. "I'm so sorry, I should have said something, I should have stopped her." Yale shook his head. Couldn't speak, just shook his head. Professional musicians emerged from the crowd, identifying themselves. "I'm with the Philharmonic. I teach at Juilliard. Who's your teacher? Have you considered—" Lorraine Hayes made her way through the crowd, slowly, deliberately, commanding space just by existing. She reached the stage, looked at Yale, really looked. "That's how we do it, baby." Each word deliberate, weighted. "That's exactly how we do it." Cultural validation, recognition, connection to lineage, to history, to the tradition of black musicians taking European forms and making them breathe, making them swing, making them speak truth. Mr. Anderson reached Yale, his hand on Yale's shoulder, steady, grounding. Yale turned, buried his face in Bill's shoulder, shaking, finally letting himself feel everything. "They heard me," Yale whispered. "Mama and Daddy, they heard it." "They did, son," Bill said, his voice thick with emotion. "They surely did." Someone shouted from the back. "Who is he? What's his name?" Someone else answered. "Yale Brooks, he's 16. Remember that name?" The crowd took it up, repeating it. "Yale Brooks, 16. Did you hear? Did you see? I can't believe." Victoria took a step forward, then another. The crowd quieted, watching, waiting. Would she double down? Would she make excuses? Would she try to explain it away? She stopped 3 feet from the bench. The space between them heavy, dangerous. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I was wrong." Her voice stripped bare. No performance, no pretense, just human, just ashamed. Completely, utterly wrong. Not an excuse, not a but, just acknowledgement. The room stayed quiet, some nodding, some still uncertain, everyone processing. Victoria's hands trembled. "I said those things to a child, talking to herself as much as anyone, processing in real time, understanding the weight of her words, the damage of her assumptions. God forgive me, I said those things to a child, and not just any child, a—" Her voice broke. She couldn't finish. "It's okay," Yale said, quiet, still kind, even now. "It's not," Victoria said. "It's really not." Lorraine Hayes spoke. "But it can be better. If we learn, if we listen, if we change." Victoria nodded, unable to speak, the weight of her performance crushing her now. "Talent doesn't ask permission," Mr. Anderson said to Victoria, his voice carrying. "It just needs not to be crushed." The words hung in the air, simple, true, undeniable. The ovation started again, not for the performance now, for the moment, for the possibility, for the grace Yale showed, for the lesson everyone learned. Mr. Anderson helped Yale to his feet. Someone handed Yale his cane, respectfully, carefully. No longer invisible, no longer dismissible. Phones everywhere, chiming, notifications, the video spreading, 10,000 views, 20,000, 50,000, growing exponentially, going viral, going global. A conservatory board member pushed through. "Young man, we need to talk. Opportunities, programs, scholarships." Lorraine held up a hand. "Give him space. Let him breathe." She turned to Yale. "You got representation, baby? Someone looking out for you?" Yale shook his head. "You do now," Lorraine said, handed him her card. His fingers traced the embossed letters. "We'll talk when you're ready, no rush. But you need someone who knows this industry. Someone who will protect you." The crowd started dispersing, slowly, reluctantly, no one wanting to leave, everyone wanting to hold on to the moment, to remember how it felt, to tell people they were there. Victoria stood off to the side, alone, watching, learning. For the first time in her life, the student instead of the teacher. and Yale, standing on stage, still trembling, still processing, but no longer invisible. Finally heard. The conservatory director approached Yale, his whole demeanor transformed, shoulders back, smile wide, hands extended like they were old friends. "Young maestro," he said, the title sudden, convenient. "I must apologize, we had absolutely no idea you were this talented. If we'd known—" "It's okay," Yale said, his voice hoarse, exhausted. "It's not okay. We should have asked, should have listened, should have given you a chance earlier." The director glanced around, making sure people heard him, making sure his response was documented. "We'd like to discuss opportunities, our advanced program, full scholarship consideration. We have resources for students with exceptional talent, regardless of their background." Lorraine stepped between them, gentle but firm. "He just played the performance of his life. Maybe let him catch his breath?" The director nodded, backed off, but left his card on the piano bench, just in case, just to be on record as having offered. Victoria remained near the stage, not leaving, not approaching, just present, a witness to her own reckoning. A conservatory student asked Yale, "How did you learn to blend classical and jazz like that? I've been studying for 6 years and I can't—" Yale smiled, tired but real. "My parents taught me, the piano taught me, life taught me, Bill taught me. Simple answer, honest answer, the only answer that mattered." Mr. Anderson squeezed his shoulder, pride radiating. "Perfect fifth, son, the sound of truth." Sophie Mitchell wrote down contact information, phone numbers, email addresses, names Yale couldn't see but might need later. "People want to reach you, but only if you want them to reach you. You don't owe anyone anything." Yale nodded, grateful for the buffer, for someone thinking about his needs instead of theirs. The video view count kept climbing. Someone showed their phone to someone else. 200,000 already. 300,000. It's on TikTok. It's on Twitter. Everyone's sharing it, going viral in real time. The algorithm doing what algorithms do, finding the emotion, the injustice, the triumph, the perfect story arc, spreading it across platforms, across states, across the world. An older man in a formal suit approached, distinguished, serious. "I'm Professor Martinez, Juilliard, Piano Division." He offered his card. "We'd be honored to discuss your future. Whenever you're ready. No pressure." Another. "Curtis Institute. We have programs specifically designed for—" Another. "Berkeley. If you're interested in jazz composition and—" The offers piling up, overwhelming, too much, too fast. Yale's legs went unsteady, the adrenaline crash hitting hard, his hands shaking, his breath shallow. Mr. Anderson noticed immediately. "Time to go, son. But there are still—" "They'll manage." Bill's voice firm, protective, paternal. "You need rest. You need time. You need to process what just happened." Lorraine agreed. "He's right. You just changed your life. You don't have to figure out what that means in the next 5 minutes." Victoria approached, tentative, humble, everything she wasn't an hour ago. "Yale, could we talk? Later? When you've had time?" Yale turned toward her voice, studied her without seeing, then nodded. "Okay. I'd like to help, if you'll let me. Not to teach you, you don't need that, but to help you navigate what comes next, the industry, the pressure, the people who'll try to use you." She paused. "I know what it's like to be a prodigy, to have everyone watching, expecting. It's not easy, and Her voice cracked. "I made it harder for you today. I'm sorry, truly sorry, genuine, no performance, just honesty." "I'll think about it," Yale said. "That's more than fair." Victoria stepped back. "More than I deserve, thank you." Sophie stayed close, creating a physical barrier between Yale and the pressing crowd. "He needs space," she said, repeatedly, firmly, to people who suddenly wanted proximity to the story. The conservatory's social media manager appeared, phone out, breathless. "The video has 800,000 views. CNN is calling. Local news wants an interview. Good Morning America's producer left a message." "Later," Mr. Anderson said. "Much later." Someone brought water. Yale drank, grateful, his throat raw, his body depleted. The hall slowly emptied, but the energy remained, changed, transformed. Like the air after a storm, like something fundamental shifted in the architecture of the building itself. Yale sat back down on the bench, just for a moment, his hands resting on the keys, not playing, just feeling. The instrument that told his truth, that spoke when words failed, that changed everything. Thank you, he whispered to it, to the piano, to his parents, to Bill, to music itself. Mr. Anderson helped him up. Ready? Yale nodded, gathered his cane, his tuning kit, the business cards Sophie collected. They walked toward the exit, the crowd parting, people touching his arm, his shoulder, trying to connect, to congratulate, to claim some small part of the story. At the door, Yale stopped, turned back, listening one last time, to the acoustics, to the space that held everything, to the room that witnessed his transformation from invisible to undeniable. They heard me, Bill, he said, needing to say it again, needing to believe it. The whole world heard you, son. The whole world. They stepped outside, into daylight, into air that felt different, into a future that bore no resemblance to the past. By midnight, the video would have 15 million views. By morning, Yale Brooks would be a name, a story, a moment everyone claimed to have predicted. But right now, he was just a tired 16-year-old walking home, overwhelmed, grateful, changed. Victoria watched from the conservatory steps, alone with her shame, with her lesson, with the long road ahead of unlearning everything she thought she knew about who deserves to make music. The video kept spreading, the story kept growing, and somewhere in all of it, a truth kept playing. 6 weeks later, the video hit 23 million views. National news covered it. NPR did a feature. Good Morning America brought Yale and Bill on. Music magazines wrote think pieces about gatekeeping in classical music, about who gets access, about what talent looks like when it doesn't come with privilege. Yale finished his junior year, still took the bus to school, still did homework at the kitchen table, still lived with Bill in the small house on the east side. But everything was different. Teachers who'd overlooked him now smiled in the hallways. Students who'd never spoken to him now knew his name. The world that made him invisible now couldn't look away. Lorraine Hayes kept her word, became his advocate, his mentor, his protector. She introduced him to management, good people, people who'd work for him, not exploit him, people who understood that 16-year-old prodigies need protection from an industry that eats talent alive. The scholarship offers came from everywhere. Juilliard, Curtis Institute, Berkeley, New England Conservatory, every elite program that represented the establishment that had dismissed him, all of them full rides, all of them suddenly eager to claim they recognized his talent first. Yale chose Juilliard, but not yet. He deferred, took a gap year, to record an album, to do a small tour, to grow up a little before diving into another institution, to figure out who Yale Brooks was before letting anyone else define him. You're 17 in 2 months, Lorraine told him. Take your time. The music isn't going anywhere. Neither is Juilliard. But your childhood is. Don't rush what you can't get back. Victoria followed through. Her public apology went viral too. No excuses, no explanations, just acknowledgement of harm, just commitment to do better, just honesty about her own biases she'd never examined. She reached out privately, asked to mentor him. Yale said yes, carefully, with boundaries, but yes. Their sessions were complicated, tense at first, but growing into something real. She taught him about contracts, about protecting his image, about the loneliness of being exceptional, about how the industry will love you and destroy you in the same breath. And he taught her, without meaning to, about listening, about assumptions, about the difference between technique and truth, about how talent doesn't care about zip codes or skin color or whether you can see. Mr. Anderson got his reward too. The conservatory offered him a real position, Master Tuner Emeritus, actual salary, health insurance, workshop space, recognition for 40 years of invisible labor. About time, Bill said. But his smile was wide, proud, grateful. Yale's recording deal came from an independent label, small but respected. They specialized in artists who defied categories, who broke boundaries. They gave him creative control. Let him make the album he wanted to make. The title, Not Really. Reclaiming the words meant to diminish him, turning them into power, into identity, into art. When interviewers asked about it, he smiled. She said I'd never really play, so I called the album Not Really, to remind myself, to remind everyone, that their doubt doesn't define my truth. The community impact rippled outward. Yale and Lorraine partnered, created a scholarship fund for blind students, for students of color, for anyone the traditional system overlooked, for anyone who needed someone to believe in them when nobody else did. The conservatory changed policies, added diverse guest artists, created accessible programs, established scholarships for non-traditional students. The language still imperfect, but the intention moving in the right direction. 3 months after the performance, Yale sat in a professional recording studio, the kind with perfect acoustics and equipment worth more than houses. Different from the conservatory, more intimate, more real. Mr. Anderson sat in the booth, watching through glass, listening, proud beyond measure. Lorraine produced, guiding without controlling, supporting without interfering, believing without question. Yale's hands rested on the studio piano, a Steinway, different from the one at the conservatory, but perfect in its own way. He was 17 now, still the same kid who tuned pianos, but also someone new, someone heard, someone seen. "Ready?" Lorraine's voice through the headphones. Yale nodded, breathed, placed his hands on the keys. The first track, the Mozart Sonata. The one Victoria interrupted, complete now, transformed. The opening of Not Really. He began to play. "The piano doesn't care who sits down, it only cares who listens, really listens." And Yale Brooks, 17, blind, black, brilliant, was teaching the world how to hear,